There is a story that spans 5,000 years, a story told in synagogues, in churches, in mosques, in archaeology classrooms, in geology laboratories, a story that has generated laws, poems, paintings, wars of interpretation. But few people know what really happened. Few people know what it was like to wake up in Sodom on an ordinary morning. Few people know what people were doing that day while the sky prepared to consume everything. Today, you will find out. And the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is grievous." Genesis 18:20. To understand the destruction of Sodom, you first need to understand something that most people completely ignore. Sodom was not a slum. It was not a miserable den lost in the desert. Sodom was rich, scandalously rich. The Bible describes the valley where it was built, the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea, as the garden of the Lord. That region before its destruction was considered as fertile as Egypt, the breadbasket of the ancient world. There was abundant water. The Jordan River crossed the entire plain. The pastures were green all year round. The herds were immense. Trade flourished for generations. Sodom was the largest of the 5 cities of the plain: Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela. It was the financial, political, and cultural center of the entire region. Its walls were high, its streets were wide. There were noisy markets, limestone palaces, temples, wells, public squares where men gathered to judge, to negotiate, to celebrate. And it was precisely this prosperity that corrupted them. Because when a society has everything and needs no one, it begins to believe that it doesn't need God. And when it doesn't need God, it begins to create its own rules. And the rules of Sodom were like none other that the ancient world had ever seen. What transformed Sodom into an eternal symbol of evil was not only what its inhabitants did in the shadows. That's what they did in broad daylight. The Jewish traditions recorded in the Talmud, the Midrashim, and the writings of the great rabbis describe a legal system that is hair-raising, because Sodom wasn't chaotic. Sodom was organized. Cruelty had rules. Evil had bureaucracy. First law, foreigners had no rights in Sodom, but the city pretended to be hospitable. When a traveler arrived with money, he was welcome. He was given lodging. He was fed. But the following night, each citizen of the city would pass by and steal a small amount, a single coin. When the traveler tried to complain, each sodomite would say the same thing: "I only took 1 coin. Is that a crime?" And the stranger would leave with nothing. No recourse, no justice. Second law, helping a poor person was illegal. This is not a metaphor, it was literal. Traditions tell of a young woman named Pelatit in some sources, who took pity on a hungry beggar and hid bread under her clothes to feed him. When they discovered this, she was judged by the judges of Sodom and condemned. The punishment: she was smeared with honey and placed in a tower to be slowly devoured by bees while the city watched. Third law, there was a special bed for visitors, a torture bed disguised as hospitality. If the stranger was too tall for the bed, his feet were cut off. If he was too short, his body was stretched until it broke. Hospitality, that was a trap, an invitation that was a death sentence. But there was something even deeper than the individual crimes. It was the consensus. It was unanimous. In Sodom, cruelty was not the deviation, it was the norm. Indifference to the suffering of others was not a secret sin of a few, it was the culture of all. An entire civilization had collectively decided that the weak did not deserve protection, that the foreigner did not deserve respect, that compassion was weakness, and this unanimity in wickedness was what weighed most heavily in the divine judgment. Before the fire, there was a conversation. One of the most extraordinary scenes in all of sacred literature. Abraham, the patriarch, the father of faith, the friend of God, was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the midday heat when he received 3 visitors. He treated them with the utmost hospitality. He ran, prostrated himself, washed their feet, and prepared the best food he had. They were angels. But he didn't know that at first. And when the visitors rose to go towards Sodom, God revealed to Abraham what was to come. And then something unique happened in the scriptures. Abraham began to negotiate with God, not out of fear, out of love, because her nephew Lot lived in Sodom. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep away the whole place? Genesis 18:23-24. God said, if there are 50, I will spare the city. Abraham insisted, what if there are 45? 40, 30, 20, each. Time, God replied, I will spare you. Until we arrived at the most frightening number in the entire negotiation, 10. If there were only 10 righteous people in Sodom, the city would be saved. 10 people in an entire city, and the silence that followed said it all. Abraham stopped asking because he knew perhaps even 10 would be too much. Before the fire, there was a conversation. One of the most extraordinary scenes in all of sacred literature. Abraham, the patriarch, the father of faith, the friend of God, was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the midday heat when he received 3 visitors. He treated them with the utmost hospitality. He ran, prostrated himself, washed their feet, and prepared the best food he had. They were angels, but he didn't know that at first. And when the visitors rose to go towards Sodom, God revealed to Abraham what was to come. And then something unique happened in the scriptures. Abraham began to negotiate with God, not out of fear, out of love, because her nephew Lot lived in Sodom. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep away the whole place? Genesis 18:23-24. God said, if there are 50, I will spare the city. Abraham insisted, what if there are 45, 40, 30, 20, each? Time, God replied, I will spare you, until we arrived at the most frightening number in the entire negotiation, 10. If there were only 10 righteous people in Sodom, the city would be saved. 10 people in an entire city, and the silence that followed said it all. Abraham stopped asking because he knew perhaps even 10 would be too much. Inside the house, the angels told Lot what was about to happen. Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, and everything else you own in the city, get them out of here, because we're going to destroy this place. Lot ran out. He banged on doors. He woke those who were still sleeping. He shook the men betrothed to his daughters by the shoulders. Get up, get out of this place. The Lord is going to destroy the city. And they laughed. The Bible uses a specific word. He seemed to be joking to them, a mockery, a laugh in the middle of the night. Think about what that means. These men lived in Sodom. They knew the city. They knew what had happened that night. The crowd, the shouting, the miraculous blindness. And yet, when Lot said that God was going to destroy everything, they couldn't take him seriously. When you grow up in a world without consequences, you lose the ability to imagine judgment. When cruelty is normal, grace becomes incomprehensible. And when destruction finally comes, you don't recognize the signs. They laughed. Until there's no time left to laugh, dawn has arrived, and the angels became more urgent than ever before. Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, so that you do not perish in the punishment of this city. And then the Bible records a detail that tells us everything about the human condition. Lot hesitated. 40 years in Sodom had left roots. There was commerce, neighbors, routine, memories. Even knowing that judgment was coming, it was impossible to simply leave without something inside him pulling him to stay. Then the angels did something extraordinary. They grabbed Lot by the hands and the hands of his wife and 2 daughters and dragged them out of the city. The Bible adds, the Lord had mercy on them. Outside, the order was simple, absolute. leaving no room for interpretation. Escape for your life. Do not look back. Do not linger anywhere on this plain. Escape to the mountains lest you perish. They ran. The sun was still rising when the fire began to fall. And then, in the midst of the escape, with the ground trembling and the sky turning red behind them, Lot's wife looked back. Why? The Bible doesn't explain. It doesn't need to. Some say it was homesickness. Others say it was curiosity. Still others say she had left married daughters behind, daughters who refused to leave with the men who laughed and couldn't go on without at least looking. Whatever the reason, she turned into a pillar of salt, an eternal monument to hesitation, a warning to all who, at the moment when they boo, should be running forward, insist on looking back at what they have left behind. Interestingly, travelers and geographers of the Dead Sea region have described over the centuries salt rock formations that resembled human figures. The region is rich in deposits of halite, a mineral salt, which geological activity molds into shapes that the human imagination has always filled with meaning. The Bible describes the moment with an economy of words that is more powerful than any detailed description could be. And the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, from the Lord out of the heavens, sulfur and fire from the sky. 5 cities in flames, the most fertile valley in the world reduced to ashes in a matter of hours. But what exactly caused this? That's a question that archaeologists, geologists, and biblical scholars have been investigating for decades. The Dead Sea region, the most likely location for the cities of the plain, is one of the most geologically active places in the world. It lies directly over the Jordan Rift, where 2 tectonic plates meet. There are immense deposits of sulfur, asphalt, and bitumen in the region. The Bible itself mentions that the valley was full of bitumen pits. In 2021, researchers published a study in the scientific journal Nature about Tel El Hammam, a Bronze Age city in the Jordan Valley. What they found sent shivers down the spines of even skeptical scientists. Vitrified ceramics fired at temperatures exceeding 1500 degrees Celsius, impossible to achieve with any human technology of the time. Molten bricks, a layer of abrupt destruction that interrupted the city's occupation for at least 300 to 600 years, and microscopic spheres of iron, molten rock and fragments that indicate an impact or aerial explosion event of catastrophic intensity. The city simply ceased to exist overnight. Meanwhile, from atop a distant hill, Abraham gazed down at the valley that he had negotiated to save hours earlier. Smoke rose like smoke from a furnace. A gigantic fire, visible for miles around, was consuming the place where the most prosperous civilization on the plains had flourished for generations. In silence, Abraham witnessed the end of the world as he knew it. Centuries after the destruction, the prophet Ezekiel looked back and said something that should make us think. This is the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of food, and abundance of leisure were in her and her daughters, and she did not strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. Ezekiel 16:49. Arrogance, excess, idleness, indifference. Ezekiel is not dismissing the other sins of Sodom. He is saying something deeper. The origin of everything was the arrogance of prosperity. City that had everything and decided that the weak, the poor, the foreigner, the different deserved nothing. Sodom did not fall because it was disorderly. It fell because it was ordered in the wrong direction. Their laws protected the powerful and destroyed the vulnerable. Their culture normalized cruelty. Their economy flourished at the expense of human dignity. And the most disturbing thing about all of this, because on the day the fire broke out, nobody woke up thinking it was the last day. The sun rose over the Jordan Valley that morning, just like any other. Golden, Lazy, casting its light upon the limestone walls of Sodom, the merchants opened their tents, the children ran through the streets, the women filled their jugs at the wells, the men negotiated, drank, and argued. It was an ordinary day, and nobody knew it was the last one. This is the most profound lesson of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not about fire, it's about normalcy. It's about how entire societies can lose themselves so gradually that the abyss becomes the landscape. It's about how cruelty can become so completely institutionalized that no one can see what's wrong anymore. Lot was saved not because he was perfect. He hesitated, he doubted, he was afraid, but because deep down he still cared. He could still see the visitor as a human being. He still felt the weight of another's suffering. Sometimes that's what separates those who stay from those who escape, not the greatness of their virtues, but the refusal to stop caring. Remember Lot's wife, Luke 17-32. 5,000 years later, the cities still smolder in the memory of humanity. A warning, a mirror. And it's a question that each generation needs to answer for itself. Which direction are you looking?